Abby, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Tufts does such great work out there. You do so many wonderful surveys, you and Ken Getz and the crew, just a great group of people to work with and really contribute to this industry. So I wonder if we could jump in now. If you could talk first about the survey you just conducted and who you talked to. I think part of the goal was to get sort of, a broader array of voices.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Michael. It's so great to be here. I'm really excited to dig into this survey. A lot of surveys in the past have focused on these larger site networks, and really the majority of the site landscape is more of these smaller academic and hospital centers. And so we really want to engage these more part-time research sites and see how the past 5 years have impacted them and make sure that we hear their voices as well.
Okay, so one of the great things I thought about the survey too was it brings out the importance of what we can call the human factor. We talk about technology, we talk about all these other issues, but if you could talk about how your survey really put a spotlight on the human factor and the importance of relationships between site sponsors and everyone.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the main results that we found from the survey was that site personnel were 3 to 4 times more likely to be optimistic about the future if they felt that sponsors were valuing, applying, or even just seeking out their feedback. And I say that separately, like seeking out feedback was a factor in optimism for these sites. And so how I really see it is that clinical trials and developing these drugs is basically a team sport. And so every part of the team has a role. And it's really important to recognize that sites have a role. Their role is with the patients. Patients are their obligation. That's their priority. They need to make sure that the care is the patients are receiving care, that the trial is ethical. And then the sponsors have a different role in that they need to make sure that the trials are reaching certain metrics, that certain business metrics, certain performance metrics are being met. And all these things are important to the development of the drug, which is the end goal. And so I think sites have begun to recognize the role of the sponsor and recognize the importance of it. So sites have begun to realize that efficiency and quality data collection and speed of a trial and efficiency of a trial are important to the trial. But they're really asking for sponsors to also recognize the importance of the role of the site in that patient centricity. And it's really just acknowledging it so that when they are, using these new solutions and putting in these new technologies and whatever they're changing about clinical trial execution, that they're just acknowledging the role of the site and acknowledging the importance. And sites are really just asking for that kind of respect.
You and I were talking earlier before we went on camera here about how that sort of communication, that interest, that two-way communication is so vital in the hiring and retention process. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I think from a sponsor point of view, you're kind of thinking, what does this mean for me? Why, how can what can this really benefit for the sponsor side of things? And I think it's that not only are you just happy that the sites are happier, but that could impact directly to your hiring and retention. And the sites actually in the survey, 40% thought that hiring and retention has gotten much worse over the past 5 years. So the sites actually have recognized this. But we see it across industries, we see it across healthcare. That's an issue, especially right now. So I think that if sponsors are able to make sites happier and more optimistic by asking for that feedback, that it's something that could benefit their workplace satisfaction overall, and hopefully in turn into improving that issue of hiring and retention.
Okay, so Abby, so it's been a crazy world out there with COVID, with everything going on, with hiring, retention issues, just this tumultuous time. And yet, if you can, if I'm understanding it correctly, your survey found and talk about the numbers, pretty high levels of optimism among sites overall.
Yeah, so I think the best message for anyone overall, and like you mentioned with the challenges over the past few years, is that 80% of the respondents in our survey, so the majority of sites, are optimistic about the future of their trial, even though 70% found challenges or found that trial execution has gotten more difficult over the past 5 years. So I think it's just a great message to share that there is optimism for the future, and sites just want their voice to be heard.
Optimism is always a great message to share. Thank you so much. Great stuff.
Definitely. Great. Thank you so much, Michael.